Salve Maria. Today we are going to make a reflection, a commentary on the 18th Sunday of Ordinary Time, where we have the Gospel of St. Matthew, who is Matthew 14, 13 to 21, where the miracle of the loaves and fishes, the miraculous feeding of thousands of people by Jesus, is narrated. Also, we have the first and the second reading, which are one is a letter from St. Paul to the Romans, and the other a reading to the prophet Isaiah, from the prophet Isaiah. So we can start by considering the goodness, the compassion of the man God, the God-man. Because when we talk about a virtue, or for example, or a divine attribute given to the Creator or to Jesus, it's different when we talk to somebody else. We could say somebody is very good, or somebody is very kind, or so. But in the case of our Lord, you have to say it differently. It says it's not that he is kind, that he is kindness. It's not that he is good, but he is goodness, because he absorbs. He has all of he's the starting point for all of these virtues, all of these divine attributes. You see, so here we have an opportunity to see the compassion of him, not only for the Gospels, who are finishing here their first public mission that he had sent them on, but to the thousands of people who are waiting for him, you see. And God likes to pray also to prepare himself to take care of others, both his disciples and the big multitudes. And it's an extraordinary fact, because he prays to God who is in himself. He is man, but he prays to him, as it were, to himself, because he is also God. As we were saying before, with regard to the apostles, at this moment, just when he is just about to do this miracle, you see, he has just finished the first mission that he had sent them on. And it was convenient, it would be good for them to have a retreat with him, to be able to meditate on what they'd done, the miracles that they'd done and everything. So that was one of the reasons why he wanted to take them to a secluded place, and he put them in a boat, and then across the lake, you see. But what happens here? He is thinking about others, and he doesn't think about himself. So what happened when he arrives at the other margin of the lake? You see, he sees thousands of people who have come out of the cities and who are following him. He sees a great multitude. He fills himself with compassion for them and cures all those who are sick. You see, because all of these people, they were so enthralled, so taken up with the figure of Jesus, with his kindness and his virtues and his capacities and his goodness, like that they didn't even think about themselves. They just started walking. To walk to where he was going takes double the time that it takes to go by ship, to go by boat, you see. But they went all the same. And when he arrives at the point that he was going, you see, he finds these multitudes, and therefore somebody else who would be selfish, who would be disappointed, said, "Oh, there goes the chance to do a retreat and to do prayers." You see, this is going to take away from us this opportunity. You see, but his reaction, because he is goodness itself, is completely different. He says he filled himself with compassion for them. He renounced to a good degree to his project, and immediately began to cure all the sick people and to teach them many things about the kingdom of God until evening fell. Until evening fell, he went talking. The scene is magnificent. There's a beautiful painting by a Dutch painter, you see, or Flemish painter, one Fortershoot, who sees the scene of all these people waiting, struck in wonderment with the talk, the figure of the Master who gives teachings like that. And one wonders how it is, perhaps our Lord was doing some special grace by which so many thousands of people hear him, because just to hear him is a wonder in itself. No? And those people waited so long, who had made the effort to go there to find him like that, received the prize, the reward for those who maintain alive in them the sense of truth, the sense of goodness and the sense of beautiful, and allows themselves to be guided by these three senses, you see. And great was St. John Chrysostom says, great was the following of those multitudes, the opening to him, the admiration to them, because what Jesus did and does to them surpasses completely the most ardent fervor of any of them that he could have had regarding him. He was completely surpassed with his miracle, you see. The disciples, on the other hand, and the contrast is rather sad, really, but it shows us how God has confidence and will raise up from so many stones other sons of Abraham, because they are worried about themselves. They're not thinking about our Lord. They have no idea that he's going to do a big miracle like that. They couldn't even imagine. But he had this in mind from all time to do this miracle to them, because it's a prefigure of the Eucharist, among other things, you see. And St. John adds in his Gospel, he says, as another detail, he asked Philip, he says, where can we buy food for such a great multitude of people? And the answer was, we would need more than 2,000 denarii of bread, worth of bread, to be able to feed them, you see. It was obvious that God could not send them to go to buy such a quantity of bread, and it would not be available in a faraway place like that, you see. So the disciples, as we said, manifested a weak faith. But God, when he chooses to act, he chooses to intervene the hour of the despairing situation, the situations that are so difficult that cause despair, those desperate situations like that. And that is the situation which they were. So this would facilitate to his disciples the virtue of humility, because if they understood that the quantity of people was nothing for our Lord like that, they could understand their own incapacity to solve the impasse and to put themselves at the disposal of the divine Redeemer to serve him in a miracle that he, being goodness in essence, would take place, would bring about in favor of that multitude. He says they would think, for example, we could hypothetically think what would be their reaction. This man is asking for something impossible, absolutely impossible. How are we going to feed all these people with 5 breads and 2 fishes? No. Does he have a notion how many people are here? His objection, his imaginary objection of the gospel of a disciple, would demonstrate how far they were following the conviction that everything is of God. Everything is in him and through him and directed by him. That is, nothing occurs without his permission. Here we can consider an important point, that the world is divided roughly into 2 categories of people: those who have faith and those who do not have faith. You see, those who orient themselves according to the supernatural prism of faith, and those who follow their own existence, see, in a function of what is concrete, of material, of touchable and sensible, what they can touch with their hands and feel, you see, with their senses. This constitutes a great part of humanity, probably the majority, you see. But God is going to show them that they should have much more confidence in him, you see. And Maldonado, who is a commentarist of the Gospel, says, God makes them bring the loaves of bread, to demonstrate that the person that feeds the whole terrestrial orb is the Lord, and he does not depend on the time nor the hour of any time to any occasion and juncture to do from any material make out of any material as many loaves, as many pieces of bread that he wants, you see. Also Manuel de Tuy, another commentator, says, an interesting question: would the loaves multiply themselves in the hands of Christ or in the hands of the apostles when they distributed them? This is not known because the gospel is very concise, you see. But St. John Chrysostom at the same time says, when he gave them to the disciples for them to do the distribution, and that they can see personally the greatness of the miracle, the Divine Master did not only have in mind to honor them with that, but he also wanted that when on seeing the miracle, they would give faith to it and would not forget it later on or relegate it to forgetfulness, because their own hands had given witness to this miracle, you see, so it'd be more difficult for them to forget. the superabundance of the miracle like that is extraordinary. He sees from 5 loaves and 2 fishes, they then pick up 12 baskets, 1 for each apostle, with their leftovers, you see. God attends all necessities and solves and cures all miseries, all illnesses, all situations, also sad situations, etc., etc. The gospel presents our Lord as being He who takes care of all our necessities and strengthens us in our weakness. Now, among these more than physical deficiencies, especially are the inclinations towards evil, the disordered passions which we are not able to dominate without the permanent help of divine grace. These wretchedness, these faults, these failings, on the other hand, help us to acknowledge our total dependence on the true lifeblood that comes from Him, from our Lord. You see, this gives a good picture of this. Is, as we were saying before, this is a beautiful prefigure of the Eucharist, because God had in mind not only feeding the bodies, but also prepare the souls to accept the Eucharist. Because if He makes such a big miracle, multiplying the loaves and the fishes, He can manifest His power over matter, over matter which He created. Walking on the waters, which He will do a few hours later, because the gospel went away, He sent them away, because He saw that the people might want to proclaim Him king, so He said, you leave and I will follow you later on. So they went and they rode, and at 3 o'clock in the morning He appeared to them walking on the waters, you see. Walking on the waters, He shows that it is the dominion which is easy for Him over His own body. So Matthew 14:22-27. In this manner, the Divine Master is predisposing the apostle to believe later on in the Eucharist, because who is capable of operating such prodigies can perfectly institute a sacrament in which the substance of bread surrenders place to that of His own body. This miracle is therefore a splendid prefigure of the Eucharist, you see. We have this available to us these days, you see, much more than we used to before, but let us continue to pray that this will always be the case. No? There's a mystical signification also of the miracle, because God could create man, for example, with a different way of feeding Himself. For example, He could make him that he sustained himself only with water, with air, or with water, you see. But He preferred to do that with a necessity of nutrition, to create man with a necessity of nutrition, because it was in His divine designs to give at His time the supreme spiritual food, the sacrament of the Eucharist. Therefore, we can say, therefore, that when He idealized wheat and the grapes as two possible vegetable creatures from all time, He not only had in mind to proportion men the resources to elaborate a good champagne or prepare a magnificent bread. No. For example, the bread of Germany is the best in the world, he said. But in the mind of the Creator, in the first place was the Eucharist, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of His own Son, under the species of bread and of wine, which in an extreme of unimaginable goodness He would offer men as a spiritual food. Saint Albert the Great says, when two substances are united, when in such a way that one will become another one, the superior one assimilates the inferior one, because the inferior one is weaker and more imperfect. You see. Now, the most blessed sacrament is such an infinite food, and so substantially superior to all the order of creation, that it assumes he who receives it benefiting and increasing in goodness, in virtue, in favor, and sanctifying the soul, that receives it. Saint Thomas Aquinas, I believe, just makes a suggestive example. When we have a barrel full of alcohol and just puts one little drop of essence of perfume, the whole alcohol becomes transformed into perfume, you see. Referring to the same subject, St. Thomas says this is what occurs in the Eucharist. when we're dealing with the normal food stuff that we eat, you see, the organism, the human organism, extracts from the food the necessary substances which are necessary for his sustenance and assimilates them, you see. But in the Eucharist, on the contrary, it is Christ who assumes and divinizes the person who receives it. It is different, you see. For this because of this he affirmed in a categorical way, in truth, I say to you, if you do not eat the flesh of the Son of Man and do not drink his blood, you will not have life in yourselves. Who eats my flesh and drinks my blood will have eternal life, and I will make him become resurrected on the last day. This is the wonder that we have in the Blessed Eucharist. Now, in the second reading, in the first place, we could say that the liturgy in itself of this Sunday predisposes us to have an extraordinary confidence in providence, because once we are united to Jesus, we can say with St. Paul on the second reading of this day, you see, brothers and sisters, what will separate us from the love of Christ? Will anguish or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or the sword? No. In all these things we conquer overwhelmingly those through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor present things, nor future things, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Now that is in his letter to the Romans 8:35, verses 37 to 39. You see, the apostle who had gone through all of these tribulations maintains the force of his soul, his apostolic zeal, and the desire to conquest the world, because he felt the love of God acting upon him. If we consider that the Father promoted the incarnation of his only begotten Son, equal to him, in our miserable nature, in order to suffer unspeakably and to obtain for our salvation, we will have an idea of the magnitude of this love that he has for us. Therefore, to complete, we can say with St. Thomas Aquinas that the love of God is so efficacious that it infuses goodness in the creature that is loved by him. Thus, when we find someone who is very good, we can be certain God loves him especially. Therefore, let us ask the favor of this divine grace to, in spite of our own weaknesses, not worry about them, but the sanctity of future generations, we are sure, will be filled with men, with people who, acknowledging their own insufficiency and weaknesses, will be faithful in spite of these defects, and will not put obstacles to the love that God makes prodigalizes to each one, because they will have felt the superabundance of this divine generosity, and for this, even in the greatest difficulties, will trust unconditionally in the unfathomable, in the eternal, in the infinite, absolute goodness, which is God. Thank you very much, and if all goes well, until next Sunday. Salve Maria.